What's next for the Maize and Blue? Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the game we all love each and every day. Best discussion, debate, and analysis. We've got Michigan Talk here with Clayton Safey. You can join him on rivalsthewolverine.com. Clayton has joined us in the past. Great discussion on Michigan football. Clayton, how you doing today?
Doing well, Mark. You sure you don't want to talk about basketball or hockey? Because Michigan's looks pretty decent in those sports. Nope, college football. All right, let's do it.
Sorry. I know you'd rather go in that direction. Juwan Howard is tearing it up from what I understand on the recruiting trail. But no, just all college football here. That's all we do all the time.
All right, let's do it.
So you're going to have to suffer on through and answer the tough questions like what's going on with this team? They lose to a winless Penn State team at home, 27-17. And we're going to go with the headline, which is, of course, the quarterback position. Joe Milton, demoted. Cade McNamara plays extremely well against Rutgers, leading a comeback win there. Had his struggles against Penn State. So your evaluation of Cade McNamara?
Yeah, so, we talked last week about his obviously heroic performance the week prior against Rutgers, leading Michigan to a triple overtime victory. And I believe the title of the video we did that you titled was, "Is Cade the answer?" And, I think he's the answer in terms of the best option for Michigan at quarterback. But Cade McNamara early in that game had a second down run near the goal line. He got hit hard, hurt his shoulder and had to come out for a couple possessions. Joe Milton came back in, and it didn't look like inspired football from Joe Milton, the kid who had gotten benched the week before and obviously didn't start against Penn State. McNamara did come back in the second quarter. Didn't quite look like he had the zip on his passes that he had before that. Credit Penn State's defense for kind of clogging the middle and making him throw wide to the sideline. And there was just nothing doing for Michigan's offense. I thought the play calling was atrocious. They didn't take any shots downfield. McNamara, just didn't quite have what he seemed to have coming out of the gate in that game. He did end up leaving the game towards the end. And Jim Harbaugh said after the game that his shoulder kind of tightened up. So we'll see if going forward he can play. It might be one of those injuries where you can kind of play right away, and then as soon as it tightens up, you might miss a week or two. He was 12 for 25, 91 yards. Not an impressive performance. I would have liked to see a full healthy game from him as the starter to really get a better feel for what we have, from a observer's perspective of watching him out there in a full game as a starter. We didn't have it. But no, he was not as good as he was against Rutgers, and probably, and we talked about it a little bit, probably should have had to, pump the brakes after the Rutgers game a bit on exactly what Michigan has with him.
And it would only be fair to evaluate him under the circumstances that you just outlined, the start, the full game. And I know that he came back into the game, but at the point in which he injured the shoulder, it wasn't looking good the way it was. He was letting it hang as he left the field. No. Hasan Akins turned in a nice game at 5.9 yards per carry for 101 yards on 17 carries. And a number of people have been wanting him to get the football more, and it looks like they've committed to him being the number one back.
Yeah, and it's been probably the biggest gripe from the fan base and some members of the media. The number one tangible thing, I guess you could say, about what the coaching staff has done this season. They've dealt with a lot at the same time. It's been uninspired football a lot of the time. It's been disjointed. It seems like the offensive play calling is just throwing stuff at the wall. The defense obviously has been figured out with this man defense. Don Brown doesn't have the talent. So really the number one thing that people have been complaining about in terms of actual facts and stats and what you can do is Hasan Akins has been averaging 5, 6, 7 yards a carry, depends on week to week throughout this season. And he just hasn't gotten the bulk of the carries until the last couple of weeks. Had another really good game. He did rip off a 59-yard run in the first half against Penn State. But this is an offensive line that doesn't give him very big of holes to work with. And, he kind of, if the play's blocked for 2, he runs for 4. If the play's blocked for 3, he runs for 6. He's that type of running back. And, he's not the most talented kid in the world, but he runs just hard as hell. And he, makes the most of every single carry he gets. And it's what you love to see, because there's been so much complaint about this Michigan team. I've mentioned, the word uninspired a couple times, but you can't say that about the way Hasan Akins has played. There's several other guys out there that are giving it their all and busting their butts, but Hasan Akins is certainly one of them. He's the bell cow back. They're still going to rotate in some of those other guys that have different specialties. Zach Charbonnet is a kid who was out with an injury last week, but he's a superb pass blocker. Blake Corum and Chris Evans have shown the ability to catch the ball out of the backfield better than Hasan Akins has. So you're going to use those guys, but going forward, if Hasan Akins isn't featured the way he has been the last 2 weeks, and really probably should have been the weeks before that, then something's seriously off. And I expect him to continue to get the bulk of the carries. So that's your one bright spot, I think, for Michigan coming out of the last couple games.
Talking Michigan football with Clayton Safey. You can join him on rivalsthewolverine.com, breaking down the maize and blue with Maryland up next. And we will get to the possibilities of that game being played in just a minute. Clayton, when we look at the defense, 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss, basically no disruptive plays, just those 2 in the entire game against Penn State, even though they didn't get torched. But Penn State has not been effective on offense against anybody this year. Injuries have taken their toll, especially along the defensive front.
Yeah, and they did get Kwity Paye back, the star defensive end, a senior, a kid who's going to, mock drafts have him going number 10. I saw one recently last week. So this is a really talented kid. He didn't look like he was fully in his rhythm, but I think he had 3 quarterback hurries, was close on a couple pass rushes that he could have got to the quarterback. He's a huge boost in there. And what he allows you to do is really, not have, it gives you depth at the very, very least. And that's not all it gives you. He's a tremendous player. And he's, I guess, the other bright spot you would say out of this game outside of Haskins is that you got Kwity Paye back. And, that's huge for Michigan going forward. Not that these games mean a whole lot right now, but the defense, I think, if it's not the passing defense 1 week against Rutgers, allowing Noah Vedral, a kid who I think got benched the week before for a couple possessions, throw for 360 yards. If it's not that, then you're allowing Penn State, their 4th and 5th string running backs, to rush for 254 yards. So, and over 5 yards a carry. Not good, Mark. So this defense has kind of been figured out, and we talked about that last week. They don't have quite the athletes they had back in 2016. When you go down that roster, in Don Brown's first year, guys that he inherited, Jabril Peppers, Devin Bush was a young linebacker that then emerged the next couple seasons, Taco Charlton, Jordan Lewis, a starting corner for the Dallas Cowboys, on and on and on. When you don't have that talent, this defensive scheme doesn't work as effectively. Not nearly, and it's a problem. So basically the run defense was gashed. So I'm guessing now this week against Maryland, it'll be the pass defense again, and we'll go back and forth throughout the rest of the season. I will say the one thing I did notice in this game, positively, I guess you could say, but it ended up being a negative. And I guess that's kind of the nature of this season for Michigan, right? Nothing can really go fully right, but people have kind of criticized Don Brown for the press man defense, basically bend, don't break, or break, don't bend defense that he runs. It's like, we are going to stop you at all costs. But then if we don't, it's big plays and this and that. They were playing off the slot receivers quite a bit and allowing kind of those short routes that, let a kid, Parker Washington, for Penn State get a, career high 9 catches. But Sean Clifford only averaged 5.3 yards per attempt, Penn State's quarterback, which is really, really low. So I think Michigan made that adjustment, and they're going to have to do things like that against Ohio State in a couple weeks if that game gets played, because otherwise it's going to be long plays. And, it's basically going to be a track meet, a one-sided track meet with Ohio State guys and everybody watching the back of their jerseys.
MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, breaking down the game we all love. Please like, comment, share the videos out on social media. People don't know we're here. People that you have influence and connection with on social media don't know we're here. So please let them know. Share the videos, subscribe, hit that bell for the notifications. That way you know when we're going live. See that crawl down at the bottom? It's Christmas time. Shop Amazon. Use the link that we provide. Doesn't change the shopping experience at all. Doesn't cost you an extra penny. Just helps us build the channel. Talking Michigan football with Maryland upcoming with Clayton Safey. You can join him on rivalsthewolverine.com. So it's interesting. as soon as you mention Ohio State, and of course, Maryland's out in front, hopefully, as a game coming up this Saturday, the Terps could give some flashes of what you need to prepare for in facing the Buckeyes. They've got those kind of speed threats on the outside. Raheem Jarrett is a 5-star. Deontay Demas is a tremendous player. They go 3 wide at wide receiver with really talented players. Their quarterback, Talia Tungavailoa, is hit or miss. So if Maryland's on, they've got speed, they've got weapons. They've bookended their season with 2 dismal offensive showings. 3 points against Northwestern. We know the Wildcats have a good defense, but 3 points, 3 picks in that game and couldn't do anything. And then this past week against Indiana, I watched that game and they came out firing and they were hitting plays and moving the ball, but they just bogged down in the red zone. Talia missed 2 wide open. I mean, guys standing by themselves in the end zone for touchdown passes, missed them completely. They missed a field goal. They went 0 for the red zone. And then the rest of the game, they got shut down and they got trampled by Indiana 27-11, something like that. The 2 in between games, they're racking up 600 yards against Minnesota and Penn State and scoring at will. So they don't have the elite talent in the numbers that Ohio State does on offense, and certainly not the consistency of coming out every week firing on all cylinders, but they've shown flashes that they could be a difficult assignment.
Well, yeah, and everybody has been for Michigan. Everybody's been a difficult assignment. So I completely agree with every point you just made about Maryland. But I guess my point would be, Michigan has played, 6 games this year? 4 out of the 6 teams have scored their highest point totals of the year against this Michigan defense. So that's point number 1. Maryland's offense is going to have success. We talked about some of the adjustments I think Michigan put in this past week that are going to help at least, maybe force a field goal or 2 as opposed to allowing a big play touchdown. But I expect Maryland to have plenty of success through the passing game. And I kind of mentioned the rushing success from Penn State. It's every other week, which one burns Michigan. So, and Talia Tagovailoa, my friends and I in the press box, we're talking about as soon as the game ended, all right, we got to learn Tagovailoa and what this kid's name is exactly to pronounce it all week on various things, but he's going to have a lot of success. He's a really talented kid. You kind of mentioned how fickle their offense has been. I see that, but I don't expect it to be, one of those off games for them. I expect them to put up some points. And let's say Cade McNamara for Michigan, moving to the offensive side is healthy. It was just kind of something where it stiffened up and he's good in a couple days. Can this Michigan offense put up some points and hang in this game? Sure. But there's just so many problems to bet on that would be foolish in my opinion. And I think that it's surprising. Michigan's 5-point favorites right now, opened at 7. It's moved all the way down to 5. Who knows? I think it's going to be a rough outing for the Michigan defense.
So we're recording on a Monday, and Michigan and Maryland scheduled, of course, on Saturday. We had cancellations in the Big Ten and across the nation at a record pace, 19 across the nation last week, where before that I was charting it, Clayton, and about 85+% of the games were being played, but 19 cancellations last weekend. It has yet to affect the Wolverines. They've played all their games at 2-4, but you've got some news for us concerning Michigan's practice status right now.
Yeah. So word came out of Schembechler Hall, Michigan's facility this morning that they would be pausing all in-person team activities for at least a day. They had an increased number, Jim Harbaugh said, of positive daily tests. So those come back in 15 minutes, and then they're going to get those players that tested positive to then take a PCR test that takes probably 24 hours or less, but one of those regular tests that the rest of us get to take and have to take. And we will find out the results. He's waiting on confirmation of those. No more detail other than that. And Jim Harbaugh doesn't give a ton of detail on injuries. Obviously, this year COVID is new, but he hasn't given a ton of detail on the COVID situation. Michigan's done a really good job throughout the season, and there really haven't been any notable players out so far this year. But he didn't answer the question that, if those are confirmed and those are positive cases and those come back positive, is that over the threshold that the Big Ten has set, where they'd have to cancel his game? I don't blame him, because everything's competitive. And I mean, hell, he's fighting for, his job and his reputation here as the season goes on. And why give anybody a competitive edge? So I don't blame him for that. I'm just saying, basically, we don't have a whole lot of answers. And it's funny, you look around Twitter and you see what Michigan fans are saying this week, this morning and this afternoon after the news came out. Do they want to play? There's a lot of jokes about shut it down, but each and every week, I guess the jokes become a little more serious. And man, I will say this: if Michigan does not play next week against Ohio State, let's say the Buckeyes play this weekend, all they need is one more game until that would cancel or take them out of the Big Ten title considerations, and they wouldn't be eligible to go to the championship game. We would have a 1973 like controversy on our hands. Obviously, if you're not familiar with Michigan or Ohio State, I know you probably are, but the people out there, 1973 was a 10-10 tie between Michigan and Ohio State, and there was a vote by the Big Ten athletic directors on who would go to the Rose Bowl and represent the Big Ten, and Ohio State won the vote, and it's been something that people have been upset around here at ever since. So a lot of storylines coming out and just in the last few hours because of that, and you start thinking down the road at that Ohio State game, and man, it would be something that Michigan never lives down from, the folks down to the south.
Yeah, people outside the state of Ohio and outside the state of Michigan probably are failing to realize that despite the lopsided nature of the series in the last 15 years, that it's just as intense. And Ohio State in particular and Ohio State fans are just as paranoid of it going back to a 1990 scenario of Michigan derailing Ohio State big seasons. There's still that much attention and focus given to Michigan. You would think, oh, you beat them 15 out of 16 years. They're an afterthought. No, Ohio State is still, they still run clocks and calendars in the athletic facility showing how long it's to the next Michigan game. That is still a hyper-focused program on Michigan and beating Michigan that has not left the program regardless of the results and the success against Michigan. And of course, Michigan wants to beat Ohio State. And you bring up just that tremendous 1973. If everybody wants to see the documentary on that on the Big Ten Network, it's probably online, possibly on YouTube. So look it up. It's fascinating. Yes, there is a litany of legacy stories, storylines, narratives, interesting incidents like that and others down through the years between Ohio State and Michigan. And this could be the topper of them all if Michigan would either choose not to play, not be able to play. There'd be some kind of controversy about how much of a decision they had in the process, or if they just, again, flat out opted not to play, as every team and program does have that right within the Big Ten stipulations to, even if the criteria is met, to say we don't feel comfortable playing, to derail an Ohio State run to Indianapolis in the Big Ten championship game. Would that not add some fuel to the fire, Clayton?
Well, I mean, I'll say this. So Jim Harbaugh is an ultra competitor. He's kind of known as like the competitive guy where it's win at all costs, and he says within the rules and things like that. But he's such a competitor that I don't see Michigan not playing a game unless they hit the threshold. So I still expect Michigan to play Maryland on Saturday. I think, Jim Harbaugh used the words abundance of caution today. But, as an ultra competitor next week or, whatever, what's your best chance at maybe hurting Ohio State or beating them, quote unquote? With this team this year, it'd probably be to cancel the game. But again, I don't expect him to do that. But as an ultra competitor, he might have to weigh a couple options. But this team wants to play, I think, and probably will. But it's going to be fascinating to see because, I mentioned earlier, we don't have a ton of details on the numbers of the positive tests and things like that. They're tight-lipped, and we'll see what happens. I mean, I hope we have some games here just because, it's what we do. We cover this sport and, everything like that. I know a lot of Michigan fans want to get the season over with, and rightfully so, and just focus on basketball. But, hey, I mean, we'll see what happens.
If you love college football, you have to cherish it more than the other sports because we get less of it than any other sport. Even in a typical normal season, we only get 12 games. So you got to cherish the games even more than the other sports because there's so few. Clayton, two-part question. So we could run the gamut in regards to what happens to Jim Harbaugh following this season. It could run from gets a pat on the back, wasn't so bad, it was a weird season, this is the way it goes, go get him in 2021, all the way to you're gone, fired, not good enough, to something in between, like you got to make some changes, you got to do something from the administration. So what would you do if you were in power versus what do you think is going to happen?
It's interesting. So I basically told you last week that I think I would make some big, changes in terms of the staff around Jim Harbaugh. And, it's funny that the Penn State loss happens and then it's like we're firing up the pitchforks and all this again, and it's get Jim Harbaugh out of here. 2 weeks ago they had a disaster against Wisconsin. I'm kind of not as fickle with my opinion of it. This season's been a disaster. I knew there was a good chance they'd lose to Penn State. I picked Michigan to win by 1 point in our staff predictions article at thewolverine.com. And basically because I had to pick somebody to win, I would have picked a tie if I could, because who knew what the hell was going to go on between Penn State and Michigan, two teams that are normally national powers, but have fallen on some really hard times here. I'd stick with Jim Harbaugh. I think that he's earned the right to, fix this thing. This is his worst season, obviously, that he's ever had as a head coach. He won 10 games, 3 out of the first 5 seasons that he's been here. Sure, he hasn't beaten Ohio State, and I'm not excusing any of that. They came close a couple times. But Ohio State's at a historical level right now that we've really never seen them be at. So I think that you sit down with Jim Harbaugh after the season. You make sure that his heart's still in it and that he still wants to be here. And, I would assume that he does. And, he's a guy that, this is his life. He said when he got here that he can't fail because, this is, he grew up in Ann Arbor. He played for Michigan under Bo Schembechler. His dad coached at Michigan. He is Michigan in a lot of ways. I'm not saying that Michigan could never part ways with him, but I think that he's going to be determined to make those changes after the season. But hey, in 3-4 weeks, whatever the outcome is, if he's still here, depending on what coordinators are still here, what assistant coaches are still here, what his contract situation is, he's going into next year. If he doesn't sign an extension without a contract past the 2021 season. So many questions will be answered in the next month. My personal opinion, if I were Ward Manuel, Michigan's AD, would be to, sit down with him and make sure that they're on the same page, that changes need to happen, that they're determined to get this fixed. And I'd give him one more shot at it.
There you have it, folks.
That's not the most popular opinion right now. And maybe who knows if it's the, vocal minority on social media. It's hard to tell these days with social media and things that go on. I can tell you he's lost quite a bit of the fan base, but, I don't know if it's necessarily the fans making the calls unless it's Tennessee not wanting, Greg Schiano, then I guess they make the calls down there. But we'll see what happens. It's going to be an interesting month and a half.
There you have it from Clayton Safey. You can join him on Rivals, thewolverine.com for top-notch Michigan football coverage, basketball, and the like. Clayton, we appreciate you stopping by as always. Hopefully we get to see Michigan, Maryland this weekend.
Yep. Appreciate it, Mark. Thank you.